Good afternoon to you. Mark Side of HurricaneTrack.com here. Wednesday now, the 11th day of October 2023. On the update, we're going to talk about that super typhoon out in the Pacific. Wait till you see this. And then, of course, yesterday, we had a hurricane make landfall in Mexico not far from Puerto Vallarta. And that was Lydia. And boy, it really intensified right before making landfall. Another one of these rapidly intensifying hurricanes. Those have been in the Gulf of Mexico over the last several years. Yesterday, one of them made landfall while it was still intensifying just south of Puerto Vallarta. We'll just kind of revisit that. And then, of course, the Atlantic Basin remaining busy. We have Sean out there and a couple of other disturbances to watch. We might actually run out of names this year. Amazing, especially in the face of a fairly strong El Nino event in the tropical Pacific. And then finally, coming up on the eclipse, the annular eclipse. I'm going to talk about that at the end of today's update. I will be covering that in Texas this weekend, where hopefully the skies will be nice and sunny until the moon makes it not so sunny. We'll talk about that. All right, I'll explain. First of all, over at Tropical Tidbits at the current storms page, look at that. That is a super typhoon out in the Pacific, not bothering anybody in terms of land interaction. But that is what one of these perfect machines looks like from satellite imagery here. Just an amazing spectacle. I guess I'll use black to make the telestration easier to see right now. A very well-defined central dense overcast, a very warm eye in the middle there with violent rotation around it, the eye wall. Category 5 equivalent. I think that goes without saying. Wow, just incredible to see. Luckily, it is far from any land in terms of direct impacts. Pretty incredible. Now, yesterday we had, this is from my friend Dylan, tweeted this about 22 hours ago. Lydia was really starting to intensify and had the help of this jet streak over the top of it, very similar to what Ian had last year to help evacuate that air with the system. And because it was moving in the direction of those stronger upper level winds, everything kind of aligned. It's an oversimplification of explaining this, but that's generally how it happened, and Lydia was able to intensify very quickly. Here's another tweet from yesterday from Michael Fisher. Yeah, it was quite ominous to see that eye quickly emerging on the infrared satellite imagery. Lots of lightning in the eye wall indicating tremendous amounts of upward motion, and then it kept on going. And then it intensified right up until the point of landfall. And we do have mountains, of course, in Mexico right up against the coast. And it dissipated very quickly. But I bet that had to hurt as it came in. I haven't seen anything in my Twitter feed. I follow, about 100 people or so. Nothing has shown up just yet, but I'm sure there was some damage. And it was quite the harrowing afternoon and evening for areas just south of Puerto Vallarta, which is right in here. What about the Atlantic Basin? Well, it is busy. Luckily, no threats to land, but as I'm going to show you towards the end of today's update with this tab right up here from our friends over at Storm 2K, we might have a really long Cabo Verde or Cape Verde season. We'll talk about that when the time comes. But here's Sean, and then that is Invest Area 94L. Are you kidding me? We're getting close to mid-October. Normally, the Eastern Atlantic and the Cape Verde season, as we call it, calms down by now, but not so much. Not just because we don't have any hurricanes out there, and I know a lot of people, that is their benchmark. If there's no hurricanes, they're not interested. And you know what? That's fine. That's all right. The fact that we do have tropical cyclones, as weak as they are, as disorganized as they are, they still count. And we do have Sean out there, and again, 94L, which if we look at the 7-day outlook, you can see the potential for it. Now, here's what's going to be interesting. These systems are already at a fairly low latitude. And again, as we're going to sort of talk about towards the end here when we look at the Storm 2K post, several threads, or post in a thread over there, we got to watch and see if any of this energy makes it over here. Because that's where the water temperatures are still very, very warm. I mean, they're pretty much warm everywhere. But that's where the potential for more trouble could lie later. Nothing indicated right now, but we just have to see. Does all that energy start to try to pile up? Maybe something weakens and then it reemerges in the Caribbean. Don't know for sure, and we're just sort of speculating, if you will, about what might happen. And that's just something to look for in the coming couple of weeks or so. because these systems are out there. They represent heat in the tropics, energy packets, if you will, and they are there. They're not modeled. This is reality. These are not in some GFS model or whatever. Anyway, this is what it all looks like on the satellite imagery, courtesy of Tropical Tidbits. Let's use blue to make everything pop. There's Sean. And again, we're talking October 11th. So, what do you expect? It's going to be a well-developed hurricane like we saw with Lydia. I mean, it's possible, but it is, these systems are battling climatology. This should all be shut down by now, but it's not. So they're going to struggle a little bit. And then we have 94L over here. And again, what happens with these two systems as, depending on what model you look at, they might end up more to the west over time, and they could get into an area where conditions are more favorable. And that's way out in time, if it even happens at all, but it is something that we need to pay attention to potentially. Boy, speaking of jet streaks, look at all this energy here streaking thousands of miles from Mexico all the way across the southern United States, including this non-tropical area of low pressure over here, bringing some much needed, I think people would agree to that, rainfall to parts of the Gulf Coast states there, and then all that cloud cover just stretching out, as I mentioned, thousands of miles. Nice storm in the open Atlantic there. Mid-latitude system, non-tropical, of course. Now, I did want to zoom in on the Gulf. All these great tools from Tropical Tidbits. We really appreciate what Dr. Cowan has done so that we can zoom in and see these types of things. And there's other sites that provide it, but I'm just so used to Tropical Tidbits that I use it pretty much all the time. But look, you got this non-tropical area in here. It's kind of a front right there. And then some deep convection embedded in here because the Gulf is still very warm, and that is going to bring a lot of rainfall. We can see that over at Dr. Mark Nissenbaum's website from Florida State University. The flickering, it was loading 50 frames of radar imagery. That's kind of cool, right? And this is what it all looks like. All the way across the southern states here into, the I-10 corridor, I-75, I-85, 65. Pick your interstate across the deep south. It's probably got some moisture on it and a little bit of the rainfall desperately needed for the lower Mississippi Valley here, where we've got that trouble with the salt intrusion, and luckily nothing organized to give us major flooding problems. Could have some coastal flooding in some of the more vulnerable areas. Think about Hancock County, anywhere where there's onshore flow, the Gulf down here, the Mississippi Sound and adjacent coastal waters, very shallow. That includes Mobile Bay, parts of Pensacola Bay. There's Mobile Bay there. You just never know. You could get some shallow coastal flooding, more of a nuisance than any other kinds of problems, right? So, how does everything evolve over the next week or so? If we ask the GFS that question, so to speak, this is what we get. First of all, our players, there's Sean, there's 94L. This is our vorticity signature for the disturbance, non-tropical low in the Gulf of Mexico. And if we put this into motion frame by frame, watch how everything evolves. The Gulf system sort of stretches out, gets into the Atlantic, still stays non-tropical. Sean down here, just to reorient you in case you lost what's what. There's Sean. Terrible arrow. There's 94L. Watch what happens with these. This is 66 hours out. Let's just stretch it out all the way to 168. There's a week out. So next Wednesday. Now this is really interesting. Got a nice flat area of high pressure sitting out here. It's further to the south now because it's later in the season. So this energy, that's Sean right there. So either Sean comes around and goes out like the Euro is showing. I'll show you that in a minute. Or, as the GFS is suggesting, it weakens, and then it gets into the vicinity of the leewards. And one of the rare times that we'll look past 168, let's just go to day 10 and see where this tries to end up. So there it is right there, 240 hours. That's what I mean. We got to just see, does this energy ride all the way across and get into the vicinity of these land masses over here, or the open waters of the Western Caribbean? It's possible. And the GFS is indicating that that might be the case, but that is quite a ways out, and a lot has to go right for that to happen. But the GFS does develop that pretty robust ridging across the tropical and subtropical Atlantic with the steering flow to the south from east to west. So we'll see. Now, the Euro doesn't agree with that scenario, if you will. It doesn't really show much with Sean. There's 94L. There's our system in the Gulf of Mexico. So let's just look at this. This is every 24 hours. The Gulf system gets stretched out, but then, boom, it reconsolidates pretty nicely there. Maybe a subtropical storm, which would get a name if the Euro is if it is to be believed. That's what I'm trying to say. So we'll put a question mark here. What's going to happen with that? It's a pretty good question mark. There's Sean, and it's going to go away, as I'll show you. And this is 94L, right? So the date is October 13th, and all that's still happening in the open Atlantic, not the Caribbean or the Gulf. I just find that very interesting. So by 72 hours, look what happens, and then 96, Sean is up here, and we don't have that area of high pressure building across the Atlantic. We can see that even more prevalent as we get out to 120, and then 144 and 168. Kind of a different look, but we got to watch this piece of energy. So Sean's gone. 94L starts to approach the islands here, and we are a week out. So we'll see what happens between the two models and our features that are out there. Plenty to watch as we move forward. And that is reflected, come back on for a second, our friends over at Storm 2K, one of our partners through Patreon as well. They have this thread over there that's ongoing. Let me get rid of me for a second. The indicators for 2023, right? Sea surface temperature, SAL, pressure, wind shear, steering, and instability, all those things, parameters, and day 16 plus models. See, there are places where people can have reasonable conversations about things into the future, not just 5 to 7 days. And everybody's civil about it. That's what I really like about Storm 2K. So here's this tweet from Andy. He's talking about, and this is true, it's a pretty interesting Atlantic satellite view this morning. This was from today. Looks like October in the subtropics, and you got that frontal system, multiple of them dipping down to about 25 north. But, as he says, the deep tropics still look more like September. We have Sean out there moving northwest, and, of course, that robust tropical wave, 94L right there. So there's Sean, there's 94L. So an interesting observation from Andy Hazelton. We scroll down a little bit, and then Yakov joins in the conversation. And I think this is an interesting point, that 2023 could be, I clicked on it, the longest Cape Verde season ever. And what he means is Genesis, I like how he spelled that out, the plural of Genesis, right? East of 45 west, nearly 4 months between Brett and Cindy and Sean, and we may not be done. That's right. I don't know who I muted, but we won't embarrass them or me, so we won't worry about that. That's funny. You got to mute some people. Sometimes they get on your nerves and you just mute them. Blocking is for the serious offenders, and those are mostly bots, but whatever. And then Derek goes on to say, yeah, this suspect the Cape Verde season will continue into November this year. That keeps doing that. Come on, Elon. It's interesting that you can embed these over in websites like over at Storm 2K. I can't embed tweets on my site, I don't think. They didn't show up. But whatever. So Andy goes on to say, this is what I was mentioning earlier, we got to keep hoping that the Caribbean doesn't get anything to sneak in there, because it is absolutely on fire. Obviously, that is metaphorically speaking, but that goes back to what I'm talking about. These pieces of energy here, where do they end up? If they get over here, lots of upper oceanic heat content to take advantage of. So we'll see how things progress. All right, I'm excited about this. The Annular Eclipse coming up on Saturday. Basically, we're talking about most of the sun will be covered by the moon, but the moon is at its farthest point in the orbit from the Earth as it approaches new moon, so it doesn't cover the entire sun up. There's just a little ring around it. They call it the Ring of Fire. GreatAmericanEclipse.com. I've sort of zoomed in, if you will, or honed in on Texas. That's where I will be. A lot of this stuff, I'll put a link to this particular Texas-2023, right, in today's description so you can see what's up. This is what it'll look like when it's all said and done, right, for 4 minutes and some change, where I will be over in Midland, Odessa. Other parts of the country will see different percentages of the sun blocked by the moon, but I'm going to be in Odessa. But tell you what, boy, this part of Texas right here, you got the jackpot. because you've got the annular eclipse Saturday and then the total solar eclipse next April the 8th. And yes, I will be out there for that. We'll talk about that later. But these are all just kind of some tidbits here on what to expect, how to get there. They have put a lot of effort into this website. Eclipse times at scenic sites in Texas, Corpus Christi, and then Fredericksburg. I know where that is. And then where I will be, the Midland, Odessa area. When will the eclipse times begin? The partial eclipse begins at 10:18. The annular, so, you know, where it's the most eclipsed is a way to look at it, 11:45. And the duration of annularity, I like that word, right there, I'll highlight it for you, almost 5 minutes, so 4 minutes and 44 seconds. And depending on where you are in Texas or elsewhere, and the website here, it's visible from San Antonio, Albuquerque. I mean, there you go, there's the path right there. But check it out, GreatAmericanEclipse.com. Now, how am I going to cover this? Well, I'm going to take a couple of our live cams and just kind of show the landscape. The good thing about that part of Texas is it's nice and open. I'll find a good spot, and we'll just kind of see how things get dark, because it's going to be a nice clear day out there, and then become light again. Of course, we'll do some time lapses. I'll take a couple of GoPros and put those up, and then I'm going to use my DSLR, a Canon camera, and I got this nice LCD screen on it that's about yay big, that I'll take the iPhone to, I got to figure all this out, to stream it. And you'll have a nice view from a telephoto lens. I got a special solar filter. If all goes as planned, we'll be able to see that 5 to 6 minutes or so when it's the most exciting, where it's just about covering the sun 99% of the way or whatever it is. And then when it exits, I might have to move the tripod a little bit. I don't have tracking and all that fancy stuff. But I am going to be there to cover it. There'll be a lot of people covering it. Fox Weather, of course, will have Eclipse Saturday coverage. You'll be able to watch it there, online and elsewhere. But yeah, I'll be traveling to Texas starting tomorrow. I'm not going to fly or drive or whatever great distances on Friday the 13th. Nothing to do with the superstition of the date. It's just Friday is a terrible day to travel, in my opinion. Hey, look at that. I just realized I've got the wrong spelling there. It says remaining. That's not even a word. Maybe other people caught that. I just saw it right now. That's okay. I'll change it when I do the thumbnail upload. I got the other computer over there. Mark doesn't know how to spell, but Mark does know how to wrap it up. So let's get this wrapped up and online for you. The Atlantic remained busy. Remained. Is that how you say it? Whatever. I'll fix the thumb. Hey, you know what they say? I'll fix it in post. Well, I'll literally fix this post video and make the thumbnail, at least on YouTube, spelled correctly. That's funny. I'm not perfect, but I am Mark Sudduth, and I do thank you for tuning in. That's my way out of this. And I should have an update tomorrow, and then it's on to Texas, and we'll talk again while I'm over there. All right? Have a good rest of your Wednesday. Again, thanks for watching. We'll talk some more tomorrow.